Maplewood had always been a peaceful place, where neighbors greeted each other every day, and children played without worry. However, a recent wave of robberies changed the neighborhood's atmosphere. Now, when night falls, the streets become deserted, and fear spreads among the residents. That particular night, the sky was illuminated by a full moon, casting a pale glow over the empty sidewalks. The biting cold made most locals prefer to stay indoors, troubled by rumors of crime. But for Sarah Bennett, a widow who discovered in her nighttime walks a way to ease her loneliness, staying locked inside was not an option. Even feeling a slight shiver, Sarah put on her coat, pulled up the hood, and went out to walk through Maplewood's silent streets. She knew the risks, but she also knew she needed that routine to keep her mind occupied. As she walked, she remembered how different the neighborhood used to be, lively, cheerful, and full of chatter at dusk. Now, with the threat of robberies, the vibe was different. Locked gates, closed windows, and hardly anyone appeared to wish a good evening. Sarah kept going, for that moment of walking helped her deal with the longing for her husband, who had passed away not long ago. Still, even with the courage to go out, she could not ignore the sense of insecurity in the air. The icy wind seemed to carry whispers of fear, and every shadow cast by the moonlight took on threatening shapes. Even so, Sarah's way of resisting this fear was to keep her routine step by step, trusting that somehow Maplewood would become better again. Sarah adopted Rex, a strong Doberman with a striking gaze, about 3 years ago at a local shelter. On that day, she never imagined she would find such a loyal friend. Since then, the two have developed a strong connection and now take nightly walks as an almost sacred ritual. Every night, Sarah and Rex roam the silent streets of Maplewood. For her, this routine is almost therapeutic, helping to combat the loneliness and fear that lurk in the neighborhood. For Rex, it is an opportunity to stay by his owner's side and protect the one he loves. Although he is large and imposing, Rex has a loving heart. He is gentle with Sarah, always responding to her commands calmly and happily. Still, make no mistake, behind that sweetness, Rex remains watchful and protective. He is always alert to the surrounding sounds, sniffing for any sign of danger. It is as if every night he is saying to Sarah, "You are not alone. I'm here to protect you." In Maplewood, it used to be common to see children playing in the street until late, neighbors sitting on their porches chatting, and a feeling of safety that kept everyone carefree. However, with the recent crime wave, everything changed. Now people avoid leaving their homes after sunset and close their windows earlier. Rumors of robberies spread in hushed conversations, in building hallways, or in quick chats at the supermarket. Each night, distrust grows. Double-locked doors, lights left on in empty porches, and the fear of running into a stranger lurking around the corners. The residents, once friendly, now glance over their shoulders, unsure if they are truly safe. Maplewood, which was once a tranquil haven, is now taken over by a tense silence and a sense of caution no one can ignore. That night, the cold wind swept through Maplewood's empty streets, making even one's soul shiver. Sarah Bennett tried to focus on the steady rhythm of her steps beside Rex, her faithful Doberman. Her breath mingled with the humid vapor escaping her mouth. She had grown used to that silence and had even learned to appreciate it. But lately, the situation in the neighborhood always left her with a slight sense of unease. As they moved forward, the moon's pale light cast strange shadows on walls and street corners. Everything seemed too quiet, yet at the same time there was something in the air that unsettled Sarah, a feeling that something might happen at any moment. It was as if the entire neighborhood had changed personalities, from a welcoming place to one full of secrets. Suddenly Rex stopped, planting his 4 paws on the ground. He raised his ears and growled, fixing his gaze on a dark alley, almost invisible at first glance for Sarah. That was not the dog's usual reaction. In their 3 years together, she had learned his quirks. Rex always observed his surroundings, but he rarely growled without a clear reason. His body was tense, the fur on his neck slightly bristling, as if saying, "Something's not right here." Sarah immediately stopped too. She looked at the alley, narrowing her eyes, trying to see if there was someone or something hidden there. But the darkness was too dense. Even so, Rex's behavior spoke more than any image she could not see. Sarah's heart began to pound harder, and her hands grew sweaty as she gripped the dog's leash. "Calm down, boy. It's all right." She tried to reassure Rex, though she was not entirely sure she believed her own words. Standing there in the shadows did not seem safe at all. So Sarah made the wisest decision, to head back home before something worse happened. She gently tugged on Rex, hoping the dog would follow her lead. Rex hesitated for a moment, but then gave in, keeping his gaze fixed on the alley until the last second, as if wanting to be sure they were not being followed. On the way back, Sarah could not shake off the tension. She felt her heart racing and from time to time looked over her shoulder to check if anyone was watching them. Luckily, they managed to reach her house safely. Even so, the strange feeling lingered. She climbed the porch steps, reflecting on what had happened. Rex, on the other hand, stayed by her side, still on alert. That brief moment when the dog growled at the seemingly empty alley changed the mood of the night. It became clear to Sarah that from then on, she would need to be even more cautious during her walks. After all, when a vigilant dog like Rex shows concern, it is wise to pay attention. Sometime before that night, when Rex grew uneasy at the dark alley, Sarah had a surprise that completely changed her view of the dog. She remembered vividly the day when, during one of her morning walks in the park, an older man with white hair and a firm bearing suddenly stopped her. He introduced himself as Officer Thompson, a retired policeman from the Maplewood Department. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said, pointing at Rex. "I know that dog from somewhere. His name is Rex, right?" Sarah, taken aback by the approach, politely answered yes. "This is Rex, my loyal companion," she said, smiling. The ex-officer kept looking at the Doberman with curiosity, almost as if he could not believe what he was seeing. "I think he used to be part of our elite K9 team. I worked with a very similar dog named Reximus. He saved many lives back then. If he's the same one, he's a real hero," Thompson explained, his gaze filled with admiration. Sarah was speechless. She had adopted Rex 3 years earlier at a shelter, but never knew anything beyond the fact that he had been rescued from the streets. Right then her heart raced. How could it be that Rex had been an ex-elite K9? Officer Thompson asked for permission to approach the dog. Rex, sensing that the man posed no threat, let himself be sniffed and even wagged his tail. Thompson smiled. "I would recognize those eyes anywhere." He was known for his courage and flawless obedience. "I don't know how he ended up at the shelter, but he's certainly an amazing dog," the ex-police officer said, still surprised. As she listened to every word, Sarah realized she knew very little about her big friend's past. She always knew he was special, but she never imagined he had a background in police service. That day, after Thompson walked away, Sarah sat on a bench in the park, looking at Rex with a mixture of pride and worry. What could he have gone through before arriving at the shelter? Was he abandoned or was there an accident? These questions became part of Sarah's thoughts, and from then on, she was sure that Rex was more than just a pet. He had a past full of stories she never could have imagined. The memory of meeting Officer Thompson still echoed in her mind that night, when Rex growled into the alley, once again showing his trained dog stance, always ready to protect. It was one more reminder that she knew very little about what he had experienced before coming into her life. Even so, Sarah felt that together, they formed an inseparable duo, an owner who needed protection and a dog reborn as the guardian of a new home. Sarah struggled to keep her steps steady, but something inside her felt restless. Perhaps it was the memory of whispers about recent robberies, or the fact that Rex, her loyal Doberman, had already shown signs of alert in that area earlier. Still, she decided to continue walking, as that was the only way not to be overcome by fear. As she moved on, the setting around her grew darker. The faint streetlight bulbs could not fully illuminate the corners, and the shadows on the walls took on strange shapes, heightening her sense of insecurity. Rex walked beside Sarah with ears pricked and watchful eyes, occasionally sniffing the air. He was large and imposing, yet at the same time gave off the feeling that nothing could escape his sharp senses. Suddenly, 3 men appeared out of the shadows. They seemed to have materialized from a blind spot on the street, as if they had been waiting for someone to ambush. One of them, who seemed to be the leader, flashed a crooked grin. "Well, look what we have here, guys. The night gets more interesting when we find someone who doesn't know when to go home." Sarah's heart raced. She immediately recalled the rumors about criminals operating in that area. Before she could react, Rex stepped forward, letting out a deep growl. The growl echoed through the empty street, reverberating against the silent walls. The dog's posture made it clear he would not back down if he felt threatened. "You really think that dog is going to stop us?" the leader mocked, trying to keep up his tough act. But his grin wavered as soon as he noticed the intensity in Rex's eyes. The dog bared his teeth, growling even louder, and looked so determined that the leader took half a step back, surprised by the courage emanating from the Doberman. The other two men, standing slightly behind, exchanged uncertain glances. They did not seem to have planned on facing a well-trained animal, determined to protect his owner at any cost. The leader, however, tried to maintain his swagger. "Come on, guys. We're not letting this dog ruin our night." He stepped forward, raising his hand in a threatening manner. That was enough for Rex to leap slightly forward, ready to retaliate any aggression. The dog's growl grew even more intense, and for a moment, Sarah had the distinct impression that the leader had gone pale, realizing that the opponent was far more prepared than he had expected. Sarah felt her stomach sink, yet at the same time, she felt a strange relief at seeing Rex firmly by her side. It proved that the dog was not just a faithful companion, but also an untiring protector, willing to confront any danger to defend her. "Maybe we should get out of here," one of the accomplices whispered, looking nervously at Rex. The leader finally started backing away, uncertain of what to say. His pride demanded he not show fear, but his survival instincts prevailed. He cursed under his breath, shot one last look of anger at Rex, and signaled the other two to follow him. In seconds, the three vanished into the shadows, their hurried footsteps pounding on the wet pavement. Sarah took a deep breath, feeling her legs tremble. Rex remained on high alert until he was sure the men were not coming back. Only then did he relax, raising his ears to listen for any distant sounds. Sarah knelt beside him, stroking his back gently. "Thank you, boy," she murmured, emotionally. "You saved me." The Doberman licked his owner's hand, as if to say everything was fine now. To Sarah, it was obvious that those men had no idea whom they were facing. Rex was not just any dog, but an ex-elite canine, with special training for dangerous situations, and above all, a loyal friend who would never leave her alone in moments of tension. At that moment, in the silent heart of Maplewood, Sarah realized that even in the dark, she would never be defenseless as long as Rex was nearby. Although fear was always lurking, she had by her side a true guardian, willing to protect her home and his owner at any cost. At that very moment, when the gang leader stepped forward to intimidate Sarah again, Rex reacted almost instantly. The man raised his arm as if to strike or grab something, but the Doberman, honed by his time as an elite canine, did not hesitate. His muscular body leaped toward the aggressor with impressive accuracy, growling in such a way that it echoed off the walls of the grim buildings around them. Sarah held her breath, fearing the worst. She knew Rex was doing it to protect her, but she had never seen him so determined and intense. The man, caught off guard by the dog's agility, tried to react, but ended up stumbling and hitting the ground with a muffled cry. Meanwhile, Rex continued making noise, making it clear that if necessary he would not hesitate to bite to defend his owner. Seeing their companion on the ground, the other two robbers panicked. They had not anticipated finding such a well-trained, brave dog. They exchanged quick glances and decided it was best to run away as fast as possible. Within seconds, their frantic footsteps faded into the darkness of the street, leaving only the leader, still trying to get up, stunned. "Cowards, come back here!" shouted the man on the ground, his voice full of anger and surprise. But his cries had no effect. His accomplices were already far away, fleeing from a confrontation they had no chance of winning. Clearly, at that moment, they feared the dog more than any reprimand their boss might give them. Rex, still in attack mode, positioned himself beside Sarah, as if saying, "If he tries anything again, I'll be ready." The leader raised his hands in surrender, obviously shaken by the Doberman's speed and power. For a moment, he tried to regain his tough guy act, but the truth was written all over his face. He had no condition to face Rex again. Seeing that the man was not going to make another move, Sarah stepped back a few paces, making sure there was a safe distance. Her heart was still hammering, almost as if she could hear the blood coursing through her ears. She knelt by Rex, placing her hand on his firm back to keep him calm. At that moment, the leader slowly got to his feet, shot Rex one final look of anger, and limped off into the darkness, muttering curses under his breath. When the street fell silent once more, Sarah hugged Rex, feeling his heart beating quickly as well. The Doberman gave a gentle lick to her hand, as if reassuring her. During those few minutes of action, Rex had shown that he was not just a companion dog, but a true defender, ready to scare off any threat with his courage and skill. "Good job, boy," Sarah whispered, feeling the adrenaline drain away. With the street empty again, she realized she would have to be extremely cautious from now on, yet one thing was certain. As long as Rex was by her side, she could face even the most frightening scenarios. The image of those two criminals running away at full speed would be forever etched in her memory. living proof that sometimes the greatest strength lies in the unbreakable bond between human and animal. Shortly after the confrontation, Sarah's breathing was still rushed and Rex kept sniffing the air as if to make sure none of the robbers would come back. That was when a female voice came from across the street, echoing through Maplewood's silence. "Is everything all right? I heard screams and barking." It was Ms. Carter, a lady known for always helping her neighbors. Holding her phone, she stepped closer, carefully walking along the sidewalk, looking around to make sure there was no more danger. Despite her age, her willingness to protect the neighborhood was remarkable. "My goodness, Sarah. What happened?" she asked, concerned. "I heard the noise and called the police immediately." Still panting, Sarah briefly recounted the story. 3 men had emerged from the shadows to rob her, but Rex had stepped in. With every sentence Sarah spoke, Ms. Carter pressed her hand to her chest in shock. "What a terrible situation, dear, but thank God you have this wonderful dog by your side," she said, patting Rex on the head. While they talked, the blue lights of a police car cut through the darkness of the block, illuminating the walls of the houses and turning the corner into a scene of high alert. 2 officers quickly got out of the car, each heading to a different point on the street. The first, a tall man with a serious expression, approached Sarah and Ms. Carter. "We got a call reporting an attempted robbery. Is everyone all right?" Sarah nodded, still a bit shaky. She looked at Ms. Carter gratefully, knowing that without her call the situation might have turned out much worse. Rex, noticing the officer's presence, stayed close to Sarah, tail low and ears alert, but without growling. He seemed to understand that these men were no threat. Then the second officer, a younger one, turned his attention to Rex, and for a moment his eyes widened as if he was seeing an old friend. "My God, is this real?" he murmured, taking a few steps toward the dog. "Is that really you, Reximus?" His partner gave him a puzzled look, but upon staring at the Doberman he was just as surprised. It was as if he recognized some special trait or recalled a memory from the past. Sarah frowned. "Reximus? You mean my Rex?" The younger officer let out a slight enchanted smile, kneeling down to the dog's level. "I used to work in the K9 unit before transferring to patrol duty. I met an amazing Doberman named Reximus. He was a real hero in our department, as brave as they come. He disappeared unexpectedly, and no one ever found out where he went." Sarah was speechless for a few seconds. It was confirmation of everything the former Officer Thompson had told her before. Ms. Carter, who was listening in, pressed her hands to her face, moved. "So this dear dog was once a real K9 officer? My goodness, what a story." The other officer, visibly touched, approached Rex and patted his neck, confirming that it really was the same dog that had vanished. Meanwhile, Ms. Carter was telling the officers how she heard the barking and sounds of a scuffle and did not hesitate to pick up the phone and call for help. "I'm sure he scared those thugs with his presence, because even I from across the street was rattled by that growl," the neighbor remarked, relieved. While one officer took statements from Sarah and Ms. Carter, the other swept the street with a flashlight, looking for any sign of the criminals who had run off. A few meters away, some neighbors began to open their windows and peek out curiously, trying to figure out what was going on. The tense atmosphere mingled with the relief of knowing no one was hurt. Calmer now, Sarah explained to the officers how she had adopted Rex at the shelter 3 years ago, never suspecting he had such a heroic past. She also described her earlier attempts to learn more, but that the records had been incomplete. One officer nodded in understanding. "There are many stories of police dogs who, for various reasons, end up lost, but this one was special in our team. And from what we've seen tonight, he still is." The red and blue lights from the patrol car reflected on everyone's faces, adding a dramatic touch to the nighttime scene. Ms. Carter, still worried, asked if she needed to make any further statements or identifications, but the officers said her account would suffice for the record. Finally, after collecting all the details, the older officer turned to Sarah. "You're a very lucky woman, ma'am. You're brave too, but mostly you have a great protector by your side." He gave Rex one last pet on the head. The Doberman kept his ears perked, alert to any motion in the area. If it weren't for him, those men might have done a lot more than just scare us. Sarah felt a wave of emotion as she heard those words. She looked at the dog, recalling all the moments Rex had shown unquestionable loyalty. The puzzle pieces of his background were fitting together. Rex was not just a companion, but a warrior who had saved lives before coming into hers. At last, the officers said their goodbyes, clearly moved by the unexpected reunion. Reximus was safe and protecting a new family. Ms. Carter smiled and gave Sarah a brief hug, assuring her that if she needed anything, she would be right there. The neighbor then headed home, still trembling slightly, but relieved that everything had turned out all right. As the sound of the patrol car faded along Maplewood streets, Sarah found herself alone with Rex, feeling her heart lighten. Stroking the dog's head, she whispered, "Thank you, Rex, or should I say Reximus? You're still my hero." The dog, as if understanding, wagged his tail and licked Sarah's hand. There in the returning stillness of the street, both of them knew that despite the hardships, they were ready to face whatever might come. After all, the true strength of that night was in the bond between a woman seeking peace and an ex-K9 who would never abandon his duty to protect. When the officers left the scene of the robbery to search for the suspects, Ms. Carter stayed behind for a few more minutes with Sarah and Rex, offering support and trying to calm everyone's nerves. You could hear the sirens fading away into Maplewood streets on the trail of the fleeing men. Half an hour later, more patrol cars arrived for backup. Some officers returned to the spot where Sarah was nearly robbed, bringing news. They had managed to capture 2 of the criminals while they were running down an alley, still panting and disoriented. However, the one who appeared to be the ringleader, the one who had faced Rex more closely, remained at large, probably hiding somewhere in the neighborhood's dark corners. "We'll keep looking," one of the agents assured Sarah while jotting down her account. "We'll do everything we can to find him. You've already helped us a lot by telling us what happened." Sarah felt a mix of relief and worry. On one hand, she was glad that at least 2 of the criminals would not be able to hurt anyone else that night. On the other hand, knowing that the leader was still on the run left her slightly afraid of retaliation. Even so, when the officers confirmed the area was secure and told her she could go home, Sarah gave Rex a big hug. The dog, now much calmer, stayed close to her, as if to say he was still there to protect her. Sarah's heart, which had been pounding, began to settle as she realized the importance of having Rex by her side. Ms. Carter, witnessing the scene, smiled warmly. She herself felt a surge of gratitude for not having been attacked and for knowing that Rex's bravery had spared Sarah from serious harm. For Sarah, though, that night would be forever marked as the moment she realized, once and for all, her dog's true worth. "I don't know what would have happened if you weren't with me, boy," she said, stroking the Doberman's neck. Rex, his eyes still watchful, only opened and closed his mouth in a light pant, seeming to understand her words and accept her affection. He had fulfilled his protector's role, even if not all the crooks had been caught. The police officers said their farewells, indicating they would get back in touch with Sarah if they needed further details. Ms. Carter offered her a ride home, but the widow preferred to walk slowly beside Rex, breathing the cool night air and reflecting on everything that had happened. As they walked, Sarah looked at Maplewood's empty streets and wondered how such a calm neighborhood could become so dangerous. Still, each step she took with Rex by her side gave her a sense of comfort, almost like an inner voice telling her she was not alone. Opening her front door, Sarah felt a huge sense of relief. She took off her coat, filled Rex's bowl with fresh water, and sat on the couch, letting out a sigh. A few seconds later, the Doberman approached, resting his muzzle on her leg, as though checking that everything was truly all right. "Thank you for saving me," she repeated, her eyes filling with tears of emotion. That night, even knowing the gang's leader was still at large, Sarah slept with a grateful heart, aware that she had by her side not just a pet, but a true hero willing to keep protecting her from any danger that might arise. The next morning, the sun lit Maplewood as if determined to restore hope to the neighborhood. Although some residents were still shaken by the news of the attempted robbery, word spread quickly about how Rex protected Sarah. Early in the day, a few children gathered on the sidewalk in front of her house, eager to catch a glimpse of the hero dog. "Is it true he drove off 3 crooks by himself?" a little boy asked, his eyes shining with curiosity. Sarah smiled and nodded, explaining that Rex was very brave but also a gentle dog who only got angry when he needed to defend someone. The children, more impressed than ever, buzzed among themselves, saying they wished they had a dog like Rex, so protective and loyal. Adults, for their part, also began to see Rex differently. Before, some had avoided getting close to the Doberman because of his size and intimidating appearance. Now they saw him as the neighborhood's guardian. Neighbors who previously barely spoke to each other drew closer to thank Sarah and Rex, offering help or asking if everything was okay. With each compliment Rex received, Sarah saw the dog's reputation grow, but Rex himself remained calm, as if unaware of the fuss. Slowly, the sense of insecurity that had hung over Maplewood began to give way to a different atmosphere. Knowing that an ex-K9 lived in the area and was always ready to protect them brought renewed confidence to people who needed to leave early for work or come home late. Now, talk was no longer only of crime and robbery. Much of the conversation revolved around Rex's heroic act and how it might deter further violence. In the face of this new reality, residents felt more united. They started taking better care of each other, sharing information, organizing neighborhood patrols, and paying more attention to what went on in the streets. Maplewood, previously mired in fear, now blossomed with the hope that, if everyone worked together, the neighborhood could return to the peaceful place it once was. And at the center of it all was Rex, always beside Sarah, fulfilling the protector's role that suited him so well. A few days after the incident, Sarah received a very special visit. A Maplewood Police Department patrol car parked in front of her house, and from it emerged two officers carrying a small silver case, their expressions full of pride. As soon as Rex appeared on the porch, one of the officers could not hold back a smile. "We're here for a very special reason," he announced, approaching Rex. Still unsure what was happening, Sarah invited them inside. That was when the senior officer began to speak. "This Doberman is not just a former K9 who did an excellent job in the past. Recently, he proved his courage once again, protecting you and our community from dangerous criminals. On behalf of the entire Maplewood Police Department, we want to give an official tribute to our four-legged hero." He opened the case to reveal a plaque engraved with the name Reximus and a short text recognizing his bravery. Beside the plaque gleamed a medal bearing the city's crest. When the officer placed the medal around Rex's neck, tears welled up in Sarah's eyes. It was incredible to see how that dog, whom she had adopted almost by chance, had become so important to the entire neighborhood. After the simple but moving ceremony, the officers made it clear that Rex was now considered the guardian of Maplewood. Many residents came to see him as a figure of protection and optimism. To Sarah, however, the effect was even deeper. She realized she had not been the only one who saved Rex when she took him from the shelter. In truth, he had also saved her, giving her security, companionship, and a new reason to keep going. Even so, while everyone celebrated this moment of peace, a shadow still hovered over Maplewood. The leader of the gang remained on the run, and there were rumors that he would not let things go so easily. This cast a bittersweet note over the celebration. It was impossible to deny the possibility of a new confrontation, but if that day came, at least Maplewood knew it had a brave and determined protector. Always by Sarah's side, Rex was ready to face any challenge that crossed his path. This was the incredible story of Rex, the guardian of Maplewood, a true hero who teaches us the value of loyalty, courage, and unconditional love. Now we want to hear your opinion. What did you think of this story? Have you ever had a moment when an animal did something amazing for you or someone you know? Leave your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to know. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to leave a like and share it with anyone else who might be moved by Rex's bravery. Oh, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, click the subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you don't miss out on more inspiring stories like this one. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.